So I'm going to be harvesting some potatoes today, and then also storing them for the winter. Now, when you're going to harvest, you want to wait until your potato plants are done growing. This is pretty obvious. Everything is, nice and brown. The plant is no longer growing. And a couple ways you can do it. A lot of times if you just pull the plant, you can get a few of them out, but you end up having to do some digging. One way to do it is use a fork, in which case you just sort of stick your fork underneath the mound and try to get underneath and then pull the potatoes up. And then what ends up happening is you get potatoes, you loosen the soil, and all the potatoes come out. The bad thing, what I don't like about it is, and what just happened here, is I did damage, got caught in between the fork and did some damage to that potato. So it's no longer good for storage. I actually usually just use if I was doing a lot of potatoes, rows and rows and rows of them or something like that, I'd probably use a potato fork. But I'm just doing, for home use here, I'll just use my hand trowel. And basically what I like to do is sort of sift through them, find the good ones, because you don't want to store any of the bad ones. For example, this one here has a little bit of green because it was exposed to the sunlight. And if you eat the green stuff, it can make you sick. It's actually slightly poisonous. So you definitely don't want to do that, and you don't want to leave your potatoes out in the sun for too long either. Another thing to look for, if you get like real small ones, anything smaller than this, I usually don't bother storing, because the smaller they are, they tend to not store as well. Now some of these are okay. They're not huge, but they're nice looking potatoes. And sometimes I'll just kind of brush off some of the dirt. You don't want to clean or wash the potatoes. They store much better having been a little bit dirty. Here's another one that's got a little bit of green. I sort of got lazy. I didn't really ridge up the potatoes too well, so I've got a few more green ones than I would like. But pretty simple. So what I'll do is I'll dig up the potatoes I want, sift through the good ones, put them in my wheelbarrow here, and then we'll need to get to curing them. So now that I've harvested my potato crop, next thing I want to do is I'm going to let them dry out a little. So ideally you have them in sort of a single layer so they can dry for outside in the sun for about an hour or two. Now you don't want to let them out there too long, just enough to dry out a bit, because if you let them out in the sun too long, they'll start to develop that green tinge that is toxic, that you don't want. So after I've done with the drying process, we'll start with we'll get on the curing process. So now I'm getting the potatoes ready for the curing process. And what I'm doing now is I'm sorting the potatoes and just brushing off the any heavy amounts of dirt. Now I'm just using like a very soft bristled brush, because you don't want to be, because the skins of the potatoes can easily be rubbed off with a harder bristle. So you definitely don't want to do that, because that will ruin the storage life. So I just try to get the big clumps off. And I'm sorting the potatoes based on size. So if I get a medium sized one like this, it'll go in the medium box. And I have a box for small ones, and I have a box for big ones. And the reason why I do that is I want to store them separately. Or I want to eat them separately. I'll eat the small ones first, then the mediums, then the large ones. And the reason that is the smaller the potato, the quicker it goes bad. So you want to eat the small ones first. The larger ones will store longer. So I'm getting these guys ready for the curing process, and what you'll want to do for the curing process is you're going to want to put them in an area that is going to be somewhere between 45 to 60 degrees with a humidity level of 85 to 95%. So high humidity and a temperature level somewhere between 45 and 60. So I'm going to cure my potatoes in the root cellar here for a couple of weeks. Now right now it's about 55 degrees in the root cellar, so the temperature is right where I want it to be, somewhere between 45 and 60 for the curing process. And that's going to take about 2 weeks, and you'll want a humidity level somewhere between 85 to 95%. Once the curing process is done, you'll want temperatures somewhere between 35 and 40. Now I'm just going to leave them here in my root cellar. I might open up some additional vents, and hopefully as we get a few weeks from now, it'll probably be colder, so I think the temperature will get where I want it to go. I mean, it's not going to be perfect, but it should be good enough. Now I went ahead and packed them in straw, and basically what I did was I did a layer of straw and then a layer of potatoes, layer of straw, layer of potatoes. You don't want the potatoes to touch, because that can transmit disease. And you also want to make sure that there is adequate ventilation in your room that you're keeping it in my root cellar, for example, and if you're keeping them in a box like this, like I am. Now I have holes. I'm leaving the tops open, and I've got holes underneath the box, so we do get a little bit of ventilation. Now I also get my ventilation with these vents, and these vent right to the outside. So I've got the top vent, the high-lows basically, and then we've got the low vent. So we've got the vents that will suction the air out, and then also bring air in from the outside. And then I have just the covers on the bottom, so I can regulate the temperature. So if I want it to be colder, I'll open up more of the vents. If I want it to be warmer, I'll shut them up. So basically, once you get the ventilation and the temperature squared away, the only other thing you want to be concerned about is you want to make sure you check your potatoes periodically. If you find any that are diseased or damaged, you want to dispose of them immediately so they don't infect the rest of your potatoes.